Welcome to In Three Poems. I'm David J. Bauman. Our guest poet today is Grant Clouser. He's the author of 6 books of poetry, including Muddy Dragon on the Road to Heaven, Reckless Constellations, and The Magician's Handbook. His poems have appeared in the American Poetry Review, Kenyon Review, Greensboro Review, and Tar River Poetry. He teaches in Rosemont College's MFA program and works for the New York Times. Our first 2 poems today are from Grant's book, Temporary Shelters, published by Cornerstone Press in 2025, and Grant will also share with us a poem by Tom Hennen. Here's my conversation with Grant from back in September. Grant, thanks for joining us in conversation in 3 poems.
Thank you, David.
So the way this works, we hear 2 poems by you and 1 by another poet, and it could be a poem that inspired you, or maybe that has a connection to your work in some way, or that fits with one of the poems that we're reading. We can talk about that when the time comes. But first, one of the cool things about this is I get to read the first poem. So the first poem is from your new book, and so is the poem that you'll read, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's called Fireline Trail. This trail, marked in yellow blazes for the maples and lost, where lookouts once kept eyes awake for smoke and fire, begins in white pines, the edges needle-soft and quiet, then blends into proud old chestnut oaks, standing straight 100 feet in a kind of wisdom. At the top, where paper birch lean toward the gorge, unwrapping in the almost noonness of the sun, a meadow filled with blueberry bushes stretches until the mountain bends to the river. I pick my fill of ripe ones, miles from highway traffic and the river now dying from mine acid. Here, so much free sweetness within easy reach. The world must be playing a trick. Maybe it's not that life is hard, just our expectations too high. Eyes bigger than your stomach, my mother used to warn. I'll leave most of the berries here for birds. Begin the switch back down to the car, back through those oaks, the dark quiet of pines, the day's haze that leads toward home, the taste of blueberries, the whole marvelous mountain still on my lips.
I loved your reading of it. You really have that television announcer voice. Segue from the serious news into, and for today's quiet moment.
Maybe I'll start a podcast or something like that.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I do have like a dozen years of radio, some of that in, well, I don't know, maybe some of that in some questionable quality radio, but still. Yeah, I always loved doing that. And I think the whole art of poetry thing, hearing it out loud, and then I'm challenged when I think of poets like Raymond Lutzak, who is deaf, but he does these wonderful readings in sign language. There's some way in which poetry, the language, comes off the page and interacts in your brain a little differently, and I love that. So thanks for letting me read that one. It's one of many that I was struck by. I mentioned that you and I both grew up in Pennsylvania. I mentioned that in our conversation before we started recording, I guess. It was in a family of hunters, but I was the only one who really didn't want to hunt, and eventually ended up with binoculars going out. I wasn't any good at fishing. So, yeah, you kind of do what you can do.
Yeah,
pretty good at looking through binoculars.
I tell people I'm still a recovering Boy Scout from, grew up, camping and fishing and exploring around the cornfields and small woods, in the sort of the suburban area of Northampton County where I grew up.
Okay, yeah. I was Clinton County, where everything north of the town of Lock Haven was all pretty much woodland, and maybe a few small villages like Farrensville, but that's not exactly, a population of, 40 people at most up there. More deer than people. And maybe it's a little bit like that now in Snyder County, 39,000 people, lots of farmland, and out along the mountain, Shade Mountain, which is kind of come to be one of my favorite places to get out into the woods here and go out and watch hawks during migration like I've been doing recently. But the thing I love about your imagery, Grant, it's so detailed that even if the person reading it was not a country boy like you or I, even if they were grew up in this city, I just think it's so visual and so descriptive that it would take them there anyway, and not just visually, but the auditory aspects of the imagery. You start off in these soft pines, the trail kind of littered with pine needles, and even if you've never experienced that, which you should if you haven't, it's an amazing thing to hear how quiet a pine forest is and how quiet your footsteps are where those pine needles are. And you get to the point where you've moved away from the noise of the traffic and even the noise of the river. Like basically, what three habitats you get to before you even get to the where the blueberry habitat
Yes.
is. And so it's no wonder birds show up in your poems at least as often as they do in mine.
I'm not a good birder. In fact, I have a poem in here where I sort of make fun of it called Life List, where
Yes.
I make up a lot of bird names just for fun, but I do try hard. I'm armed with the Merlin app like everybody else in the woods these
Yeah.
days, and try to learn try to learn the names of the things I'm experiencing. But also, I love the language of natural things. That's one of the reasons, like you see plants and birds and things like that show up in my poems. I love the words so much, and
Yeah.
sometimes combining them and making something else, making a new word out of two other words, and
Mm-hmm.
the place names that you find, some of them are real, some of them are not. I mean, this one, Fireline Trail, is a real place. It's a real trail in Hickory Run State Park in Carbon County that I've been to many times. And it does, as you start low, at the sort of at the foot of the mountain hill, whatever, by the parking area, you transition through different little ecosystems and different sort of types of forest until you get to
Yeah.
the top ridge where it's another new environment, and those experiences kind of change you as you're physically moving through them.
And I think that's something that is important because during COVID, for instance, I think that's when a lot of people started. That's when Merlin really started being used like crazy. I think there were other things at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, like BirdNet, I was using because for years I could never learn the bird sounds, different songs. A friend of mine loaned me, this is how old I am, loaned me a cassette, and I was trying to listen through, and after a while, Bazeet Bazeet and Bee Buzz Buzz sounded just the same, because just having somebody monotone saying yellow winged warbler, and then it wasn't sticking. I needed to see the bird, I needed to hear it. And with some of those apps, you can record the thing and then you can play it back and like, is that really what I heard? And did I just hear a yellow warbler? And I think it was just so good for a lot of people finding a center. I think somewhere along the line we forgot that we're actually natural creatures and learn about man against nature in the Jack London books or something in high school, when really maybe the whole problem with that is that we are nature, we're part of nature, and that division becomes a problem. And so when you're writing poems that have a lot to do with nature, and I'm glad eco poetry has kind of become a genre now. It's not just avoiding politics, it's not avoiding the tough things, it's going deep.
Well, I think in life, with things like the Merlin app or the field guides that I walk around with, when you know the name of the things around you, it's an another level of connection you have. Like
Yeah.
the first moment, I opened up that app and I'm listening to the things going on around me, and I realize there's a scarlet tanager here somewhere. There's a scarlet tanager, and even though I never saw it, it was just exciting to be in the vicinity of that thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in poems, when you name things, you're also forming relationships with it on the page.
Mm,
And as the reader is experiencing that, they're forming a relationship. So it's this sort of three-way bond that's happening with you, or at least I
yeah.
hope so.
Yeah, I like that. I think that works really well. And Fireline, I think even city folk have some idea of what a fire line is.
Yeah, in this
When you,
case, I think at one point there was a fire tower. And
yeah,
they don't use these kind of things for fire observation anymore because we have satellites. But all over the Pennsylvania wilderness, there are fire towers, or there are trails that were monitored by rangers to look for smoke. And especially since most of the state of Pennsylvania was clear cut several times, wildfires were rampant. In fact, the area around Hickory Run burnt to the ground severely, and then there were floods and things. And of course, forestry has built this back, so we have a great wilderness again. But yeah, fires were a real serious thing back in the day. That's why you have there are probably multiple trails across the state called Fireline Trail or Fire Tower Trail or something like that, Fire Watch Trail. But
Every
that's what this one originally was at one point.
I swear every county in Pennsylvania has a fishing creek.
Well, yeah.
Pretty much, it's everywhere. But yeah, this poem too this is in your new book. So tell us about your new book.
Well, it's called Temporary Shelters. And you mentioned COVID earlier, and most of this book my prior book came out in 2020, and this book was written in the span after that. So a lot of it was written during COVID. It's not really overt in there. There are a couple of direct references, but I don't bang people over the head with it. But the concept of shelter is very evident. And I think it's evident in this particular poem because that experience going into the woods becomes a kind of shelter, in this case, an emotional shelter, which really starts to kick in around the line. Maybe it's not that life is hard, just our expectations too high. And you see the speakers kind of going through something at that moment, looking for a type of I don't know, solitude or escape.
In fact, in my notes, it's that line that really was hard for me when I read it, and that's part of why I wanted to read it out loud, because that's difficult. I mean, you soften it a bit by saying the bit about mom. You know, your eyes bigger than your stomach, but the idea that the world is messed up, it is screwed up, it is a bad world, but maybe you're just expecting too much from this instance, and it's not. You don't say it in a condescending way at all. It's just like, okay, hey, just bring it down a notch a little bit. And I think for somebody maybe like me who can get a little more anxious than I'd like to admit.
It's hard not to.
Yeah, that idea of like maybe I could just kind of relax, and that's the whole thing with the birds for me, because they don't expect anything from me when I go out there. I don't have any deadlines for them. I mean, granted, I might, with eBird these days, part of the way they get people to use it and to log their sightings of birds is they make it sort of competitive and gamify it. And we'll see there's the competition here in this county, like Jesse has the highest number of species in the county, and I'm number 2, and now I'm number 2 for all time after being here just for 2 years. Oh no, but Andy.
Way to ruin birding.
He's coming up. Yeah, you know what I mean? But if we get away from all that, I'm just going out there at my best times and just enjoying what comes to me and what's out there and realizing, hey, I'm part of this. We all come from the same stardust. I need more of this, in my life. And whether that's in a city park or watching the pigeons, downtown, when I'm at a hotel somewhere traveling, there are ways to ground yourself back into the world that we're all part of.
And that's kind of the concept that keeps coming back throughout the temporary shelters. There are these shelters, real or emotional, spiritual, whatever, that are available to you, and you can get to them in different ways.
Yeah.
And the temporary aspect could either be a good thing or a bad thing, depends on your perspective. Meaning, like, you're out birding, but you got to go home. But when you're home, it's still out there available to you.
Yeah. And since we've been talking about birds, the poem that you chose to read of yours is called Talking with Birds. And also, conveniently enough, on the page right next to, on the flip side of the page from the one I just read. And so I'm going to let you read that to us.
All right. Talking with Birds. Also, coincidentally, this was written at Hickory Run again. Maybe the same camping trip, I think. Maybe the same camping trip. So within a couple of days of each other. It whistles. I whistle back. Dactyl, spondy, followed by a third or fourth bird hidden in the forest's miraculous meter. And I am almost sure this choir sitting behind my tent is not random. Pole-straight hemlocks and red maples hold back the sun, tower like saints of memory. I'm alone among old bark, tattooed with lichens, so at ease with what the world wants of them, they die standing up. As the trunks reach skyward, their lower branches weaken each year and fall off, useless in the dim below the canopy, like the duff plumage of young birds as they learn to fly. Some of those birds are telling me about the uses of wind, how when they catch it right, it can carry them anywhere. Maybe across the river gorge, where more birds are turning every hour into music, reaching for the wind, asking it to hold them.
So good. That line, again, a sobering moment. Even if I can't explain to you why, and maybe some of it I can, but that whole thing, that this choir is not a random thing. Not
What?
because they're singing for you necessarily, but when you realize it's not random, maybe that's where you're actually in the moment. You're actually there, not just listening to something else that's happening. You're part of what's happening.
I mean, haven't you been on a ridge watching hawks and it feels like they're performing for you?
Oh, yeah.
It feels like you're the only person there experiencing this. I mean, any tourist anywhere in the world snapping a picture of something cool has that this is my personal moment. And honestly, it's that trick that the mind does to us, which I think is so necessary. It's a sort of cleansing, a relief just to have that moment where you feel like you and the world are communicating.
Yeah, I think the first time hearing a raven fly in front of me, and I remember looking at it thinking, I'm pretty sure that's a raven, not a crow. And they make a different kind of call. They do different weird stuff, and they do like clicking, and all of a sudden it started doing this metallic clicking. And it was way up in the North Woods, not quite to the Black Forest Trail of Pennsylvania, but somewhere up there in the woods. And I'm at this lookout that I hiked maybe a mile or so out to by myself. And it's echoing in the valley right above Pine Creek, as a matter of fact. And it's just this magic moment where, wow, I'm the only human hearing this. I mean, maybe not. There could have been a hunter further down the valley or something, but it was a private moment, but also, I don't know, just also help a grounding moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think, at least for myself, it's important to go out into the woods alone as much as
Mm-hmm.
possible. I go camping a couple times a year by myself, and most weekends I'm out hiking alone because I just think I'm looking for those sort of one-on-one moments with a waterfall or an oak tree or a deer.
Yeah. And do you have people in your life telling you, you shouldn't be out there alone?
I
And I
do
think,
sometimes.
I'm like, but that's the whole point. Well, not always. There
People
is
at
a,
work are like, you're gonna be a week by yourself? Who you talk to? They're like, the campfire.
yeah, yeah. And
That's
it's a
the
good
point.
way to really get comfortable with your own company, I suppose, too. There's a Mary Oliver poem. Maybe I can put a link to it in the podcast comments or something later if I can think of it. But I know there's a line, I think it's the ending line, where she talks about this, and she said something about, if I invite you to the woods with me, I must love you very much.
That, yes, I love that.
Because she guards those quiet moments.
You must be a
Is that
person who doesn't talk too much.
Absolutely. So, Temporary Shelters is the latest book. Both of these poems from that. And now you chose a poem from Tom Hennen called From a Country Overlooked. Tell us why you chose that poem to read, and like how it's all connected maybe to this, or how
Well,
you see it connected.
I don't know Hennen. I think a friend of mine, Brian Beatty, recommended it to me years ago, and I have his book Darkness Sticks to Everywhere. He's also a nature guy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think he works in ecology in Minnesota. And there's just the quiet questioning and peace with things sort of line that flows through a lot of his poems. Not ignoring the rest of the world,
Right.
acknowledging that it's still there, but also acknowledging that there are other things worth paying attention to. And most of all, it's the ability to marvel at those things and be able to find wonder and appreciate wonder,
Mm-hmm.
even in small things like in frogs and ditches. I really love that about his work. So do you want me to read that now?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to hear it.
Okay. From a country overlooked. There are no creatures you cannot love. A frog calling at God from the moon-filled ditch, as you stand on the country road in the June night. The sound is enough to make the stars weep with happiness. In the morning, the landscape, green, is lifted off the ground by the scent of grass. The day is carried across its hours without any effort by the shining insects that are living their secret lives. The space between the prairie horizons makes us ache with its beauty. Cottonwood leaves click in an ancient tongue to the farthest cold dark in the universe. The cottonwood also talks to you of breeze and speckled sunlight. You are at home in these great empty places, along with red-winged blackbirds and sloes. You are comfortable in this spot so full of grace and being that it sparkles like jewels spilled on water.
Mm. I think there's an echo of that the whole marvelous mountain still on my lips there at the end of that. I could definitely see. I mean, part of my whole wanting to do a poetry podcast in this way was because I really wanted to explore the way poems talk to each other and the way poets sometimes talk to each other without us even realizing that we're doing it, maybe. But we're so influenced by things that we've read that resonate with us. And I thought it would be kind of fun to explore that. And I didn't, when we went into this, I don't know why, the way those two lines fall in both of those poems, I didn't see that similarity until just now as you were reading it.
Well, I loved his moment. The cottonwood also talks to you of breeze and speckled sunlight. And that made me think of just the beginning that I was talking with birds. It whistles, I whistle back. Like,
Yeah.
just communicating with the things out there and just feeling like you're feeling like they're accepting you.
Yeah, and the whole thing I said about birds before, where they're not expecting anything of me, that whole part of the day carried across its hours without any effort by the shining insects that are living their secret lives. It's like that with the birds too. They're not counting the hours, let alone, moving the hours or trying to influence time maybe the way we might be. They're just living in it. I know people say, what is it that what's the quote? A friend of mine said, you and your birds, we don't talk as much. But it's just that whole being overlooked. There's this beautiful part of the world, even if it's a pigeon on the window or a goldfinch outside. There's this whole thing that gets overlooked. There's all these different birds all around, and I can't imagine how, like, growing up, I knew there were robins, I knew there were crows, I knew there were different birds, but like you said, when you're able to suddenly, like, put a name to what bird is singing, and the chorus becomes something other than just a chorus, it's like when you're listening to music, and you start to be able to pick out some things. Ooh, listen to that oboe. Hear what that flute is doing, or the harmony that the singers are doing. You start becoming part of what's happening instead of living in your to-do list and your anxieties and worries. It's a very helpful thing to do, and I suppose I should do a whole episode on this that doesn't involve birds.
Well, you couldn't
Because there are
do
probably
it.
other ways.
You wouldn't
That's for
last.
someone else. That's for someone else to carry that cross. It's not mine.
But I think that being sort of an enthusiast about something.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, I mean, the difference in pleasure you get looking at a bird feeder full of brownish gray birds and going, oh, there's
Yeah.
a bunch of brownish gray birds. But then the different thrill you get going, knowing what kind of sparrow that is, knowing that's a cowbird, knowing that's a this and that, just knowing and understanding it becomes itself a different kind of pleasure.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people become obsessive about things, because they're looking for those small nuggets of pleasure in their life. I mean, with poetry,
Yeah.
you start understanding how a sonnet works, how
Hmm.
metaphors work, and the more you know about these things, the more pleasure you get out of experiencing them, and the overall higher pleasure quotient you have in your life.
Well, so there's this kid somewhere in the UK, I think, who his big excitement thing that he notices everything about is different trains. And at the beginning of an Instagram video, he's just beaming with joy. And I say kid, but he's like probably in his 20s, I'm sure. And he's like, "Okay, the 529 is coming in from Yorkshire, and this one is built in 1922." And he's just, and I don't know anything about trains, but I'm excited for him.
Well, I mean, yeah, and good for him too. For a while, I tried to learn more about rocks, so I got a bunch of rock books. My theory was that they're easier to catch.
Fair.
You see one, you don't have to sneak up on it. So
Fair.
I thought, oh, fascinating. If I could learn more about the rocks that I'm encountering, this is from the such and such era and is volcanic such and such, and that just didn't go very far.
I really like that idea of getting in touch with whatever it is that you've set your heart on, the minutiae of the thing, the little details, whether that be poetry or music. I know when I talked to Brian, who is my partner, I forget what song he was playing, and I said, "Well, that's a really interesting key change." And he looked at me and said, "Well, okay, I can see why you think that's a key change. It's a modulation, and I don't know the difference." So his knowledge of those things just blows me away.
Yeah.
So what else do you want people to know? Now, your website's uniambic.
Yeah, uniambic.
Is that still it?
I did that as a joke, but also GrantClouser.com works. Will go to the same
Okay, good.
place because
I was going to ask if they put in GrantClouser.com, do they get there?
yes, but because some people read uniambic and try to pronounce it wrong and like what, or think that the I is an L, and yeah,
And you're
it was a joke that made me laugh for 5 minutes, but no one else.
And they think this guy's really into free verse, not magical stuff.
Even though I teach a class in form.
Yeah. So tell us about your teaching. What else do you do? You're teaching in an MFA program right now.
Yeah, at Rosemont now, but we'll probably be looking for something else because I think that program is being phased out since the acquisition by another college. Teaching is something I do on the side for fun. I have a day job. I just love the opportunity to get in front of a class for 3 hours once a week and just talk about something I really love. So that's why I do that.
So now you've got this book that has just come out. Are you starting on the next thing, or are you doing some more camping in the meantime?
Well, I am. Yeah, my fall trip is coming up in November. A couple of times a year, I take these trips by myself. They're, camping, hiking trips, but I also bring a bunch of notebooks and a bunch of books and come home with half a dozen or so poems.
Fabulous.
And some of them I even keep. So yeah. So I especially like the colder weather trips because just there's a cool feeling about lighting a campfire that's actually useful rather than just decorative.
And plus hiking through mosquitoes and and the humidity of summer is just not fun.
Yeah, definitely less buggy.
I didn't notice it, I think, as much when I was young and skinny, when I first started backpacking, but summer's when I had off. So, there we have the dog. I think podcasts and such are allowed to have dogs these days. It's okay, sweetheart. We're almost
everywhere is allowed to have dogs.
Yeah, that's one of the best things maybe that came out of lockdowns is having animals on screen with us. Grant, thank you so much for joining us in 3 poems and sharing your work and work that was meaningful to you. What an honor to read with you again. That's something I didn't mention. You and I read together at our alma mater quite a few years back. It seems like yesterday, but nice to read with you again. And I hope we get to do it again in the future. Yeah,
which is now called whatever it's called now.
Speaking of those colleges being acquired and what's the word? Merged.
Commonwealth. That's what they call now. Commonwealth
University of Pennsylvania. At Bloomsburg? I am not sure how they say it.
Something complicated like that.
Well, thank you. Anything else you want us to know about your work before we go?
No, I mean, if you happen to look on Blue Sky, I'll be there. And my daughter and her boyfriend, who are filmmakers, made a series of videos.
Yes.
By the time this gets published, there will be 2 of those videos from the poems available. and another one coming out. I don't know when this is coming out. There's another one coming out in October, so a total of 3 of poems from it. And Danica and Alex are so good at what they do, so I think people will like them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Grant, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The poem From a Country Overlooked by Tom Hennen was presented as published in his book Darkness Sticks to Everything from Kenyon Press in 2013 and was used with their permission. Thank you so much for all the encouragement and support of the podcast. I've heard so many enthusiastic comments and such great feedback. I just can't tell you how much it means to me. There will be plenty more poetry conversations ahead this season. And just some of the guests include Jose Hernandez-Diaz, Marjorie Maddox, Monica Prince, Philip F. Clark, Katie Manning, and many more. So please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Blue Sky, and listen on your favorite podcast app, or at in3poems.com, or you can even tune in to the In3 Poems channel on YouTube. Thank you so much.